Finally, in today's video, we will listen to the speech by the president of Ferrari dedicated to the fans. For months, we've all been wondering, how is it possible that Ferrari finds itself in 2025 without victories? What went wrong with this year's project and how can it be avoided in the future? As we said, there was a meeting in Maranello with the leaders yesterday, and there was also a response on how to guide Ferrari for the coming years. Let's see what will be changed. Let's see what Ferrari has done wrong in recent months, including the loss of several engineers who have since found success elsewhere. We need to talk about Mercedes' suspicious front wing as the FIA might intervene. Finally, let's talk about the election of the FIA president, Ben Sulayem. We'll see Briator's statements on Hamilton and Cardal in Aston Martin with a comparison to Ferrari. Before we start, please leave a supportive like. And now let's see everything in detail. How is it possible that, with Hamilton on the team and a project started long ago, the red is here again without victories for almost a year? Today, for the first time, it's not just the technicians or drivers talking about it openly, but directly the top management of Maranello, namely John Elkann and Benedetto Vigna. Both spoke during the Ferrari Capital Markets Day 2025, an event initially for investors. But this time it had a different tone, almost a direct response to disappointed fans. After a 2024 season in which Ferrari really came close to the Constructors' Championship, the arrival of Lewis Hamilton sparked huge enthusiasm. The objective was clear: close the gap and bring a title back to Maranello. But the reality was different. The last Formula 1 victory dates back to October 27, 2024, with Carlos Sainz. Since then, a heavy silence. No victories and no clear signs of a breakthrough. Meanwhile, frustration grows inside and outside the box among the drivers, engineers, and especially the fans who now live every weekend with the hope of redemption that never comes. During his speech, John Elkann spoke in tones that go beyond his role as president. He said clearly, Ferrari is unique for its tradition, technology, and racing. It is the combination of these three souls that defines who we are. And then a passage that strikes anyone who loves this sport. He said, I want to be clear, it's a personal matter. My commitment as president and as an enthusiast is to ensure that every decision strengthens Ferrari's uniqueness. I am committed to the people, to the Ferrari enthusiasts, and to the fans eager to see us win in Formula 1, as we are already winning in endurance. A direct, almost intimate message. Elkann also recalled the 3 consecutive victories at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, a sign that Ferrari's DNA in racing still works, but not where the fans want to see it, in Formula 1. And he concluded with the classic cry that needs no explanation: Go Ferrari always. Alongside him, Benedetto Vigna, the CEO, also addressed the issue with very clear words. The last time we committed to winning in racing, he said, we succeeded in endurance with the 499p, but in Formula 1 we need to improve. We have to win because we owe it to our fans around the world. These are simple but heavy words, because coming from those who run the company, they mean only one thing. The pressure is very high, and not just for the sporting results, but also for everything that Ferrari represents in the world. A symbol, a dream, an Italian icon that cannot afford to lag behind. The feeling is that a new phase is maturing in Maranello. Hamilton is trying to build, Leclerc wants to win, and Vasseur is under scrutiny, and the leadership is making it clear that there's no more room for excuses. The time for words seems to be over. Now results are needed. And the next season could be the decisive one to understand if this Ferrari project is really ready to return where it belongs, at the top of Formula 1. But we also need to analyze the context in which these words by John Elkann and Benedetto Vigna were said, because the atmosphere now in Maranello is very important. In fact, it's not just the results from Singapore. By now, everyone in Maranello has understood. The SF24 has reached the end of its road. The performances aren't there, the technical solutions no longer work, and every weekend seems worse than the last, even within the sports management. Someone says clearly, better to close this chapter and focus everything on 2026. Confirmation also comes from the movements at the top. Yesterday in Maranello, John Elkann arrived by helicopter in Fiorano. There wasn't an extraordinary meeting, but a summit discussion, officially to talk about the product, but everyone knows that the atmosphere in the racing department is tense. Tensions are rising, results aren't coming, and the team is divided. The SF25 is now a fragile, unpredictable, and difficult car to manage. In Singapore, the technical limit was glaringly evident. Leclerc was forced to lift and coast from the first laps. The brakes were at their limit, and the car, instead of attacking, just had to survive. It's unacceptable for a team that, a year ago, was competing for the Constructors' Championship until the last race. And then the choice is inexplicable in the pit box. Pitting soft tires on Hamilton at lap 46, knowing full well he would overheat the brakes trying to catch Antonelli. It wasn't a risk, it was a forewarned suicide. In fact, Hamilton was forced to take the escape roads just to make it to the finish line. The reality is that Ferrari arrived at Marina Bay with the minimum goal of defending second place in the constructors, but Mercedes turned the situation around. Russell won the race, his second of the season after Canada, and the red car sank even further. Leclerc came in 6th, Hamilton 8th, and also penalized by 5 seconds. And to think that in the first minutes of the weekend, in the simulation data, the SF25 seemed promising, but it only took a few laps to understand that the car had been pushed beyond the limit with an extreme aerodynamic setup that caused it to hit the ground on the asphalt. As soon as it was raced to stay legal, Ferrari lost downforce and performance, and the illusion ended. Even Haas, which shares part of Ferrari's technical DNA, followed the same philosophy. Andrea De Soto's team tried to save the 2025 project by raising the car and seeking balance. The result is that it is more stable but slower. In short, the same problem as Ferrari. A wrong concept at the base. In short, everyone inside the sports management knows it. The SF25 is a dead car. Only Frederic Vasseur continues to believe he can bring out hidden potential. And to chase that illusion in Singapore, they even took absurd risks, including reducing the brake area to save aerodynamic efficiency. We saw the result. The brakes overheated and the drivers were frustrated. And the team becomes more and more divided between those who want to look forward and those who stubbornly believe in the present. In the pit box, the feeling is that everyone tells a different truth. Vasseur, Leclerc, Hamilton, the engineers, there's no longer a single voice. And when a team starts to lose unity, it's impossible to recover. The summer updates, a new floor and track rear suspension was supposed to represent the relaunch. Instead, they made no difference. The opponents continued to develop. McLaren, Mercedes and Red Bull, while at Maranello progress has stalled. And so from being a potential second force, Ferrari risks finishing 4th in the Constructors' Championship. But beware, stopping development now is not a mistake. In fact, it is probably the only sensible decision. Continuing to spend in 2025 would only have burned budget cap resources without any real gain. Better to focus everything on the future on the Ferrari 678, the first fully signed by Zera. The chassis is already in an advanced stage and the first static tests have begun. The real problem, however, will be lasting until the end of the season. There are 6 races left, and within the team the goal is only one: to avoid letting frustration explode. Because the difficulties are not only technical, but also mental, leadership and mutual trust. And Ferrari today needs all 3. And even Luca Codero di Montezemolo has spoken again, recalling the Ferrari that 25 years ago began a dominant cycle in Formula 1 and today has been in crisis for many years. In fact, Ferrari has lost its leadership. According to the former president, what is missing today at Maranello is not just speed or strategy. What is missing is true leadership. A figure capable of uniting the team and establishing themselves as an absolute reference point, just like in the days of Jean Todt and Michael Schumacher. Montezemolo spoke on the occasion of the 25th anniversary of the 2000 World Championship, which ended 21 years of drought and began the most successful cycle in Ferrari's history. In short, strong, courageous and authoritative leaders are needed, people capable of making decisions. When Montezemolo arrived in 1991, Ferrari was exactly where it is today, confused, slow and directionless. Yet that dose of humility brought the revolution that changed everything. Indeed, Montezemolo wanted Jean Todt, Ross Brawn, Rory Byrne, Michael Schumacher at all costs, and each knew how to win. Unfortunately, Montezemolo's legacy has not been preserved. In the following years, Ferrari lost stability in key roles, with continuous changes at the top. And the result is evident, because those who grew up in Maranello today are winning elsewhere. Just look at Andrea Stella, a symbol of that school and today head of McLaren. Another example is Laurent Miki, who today is the team principal at Red Bull. And what many do not know, however, is that Miki is applying at Red Bull the very method that Maranello never allowed him to implement. And this is precisely the real difference between the two worlds today. Red Bull, with Miki at the helm, has chosen a totally different approach, working in an open, shared manner without walls between departments. In Maranello, instead, they continue with isolated compartments. Everyone does their own job, but without the total collaboration that in Formula 1 is essential to create a truly coherent car. The reality is simple. Laurent Miki wanted to change Ferrari's mentality, but they didn't let him. And now from the outside, he is proving he was right. He brought to Red Bull a working philosophy that delivers results, based on sharing, transparency, and technical consistency, the same that is completely missing at Maranello today. So, the problem is not only this F25 at Ferrari, but it's the system. At Milton Keynes, they are working to understand the behavior of the 2025 car, to anticipate the technical revolution of 2026, when ground effect will disappear, and everything will change. In Maranello, instead, they are navigating by sight without certainties and without a clear plan. And the paradox is that the approach of Laurent Mekier, which is strengthening Red Bull today, is the same that Ferrari rejected. We have seen a more optimistic vision from John Elkann, who reassures the fans and puts racing first, initially talking about the facts with the 3 consecutive victories at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and then talking about hopes for the future of Formula 1. On the other hand, we have seen a slightly more negative vision, with the loss of many key engineers leaving Ferrari for other teams. Andrea Stella heading McLaren, Laurent Mekier heading Red Bull. But let's see who else is positive about Ferrari, but particularly about Lewis Hamilton. Flavio Briatore has spoken again, and this time he does so on a topic that is causing discussion throughout the paddock. The former team principal of Benetton and Renault, now a key figure at Alpine, has made a strong prediction. In 2026, everything will change. Hamilton will be back fighting for victory. A statement that carries weight, especially because it comes from someone who has experienced and won Formula 1 revolutions. Hamilton, who joined Ferrari in 2025 with the aim of bringing Maranello to the top, has experienced a season full of difficulties, technical problems, uncertain communication with the pit box, and an SF25 that never really allowed him to express himself. And it's a painful assessment, but Briatore remains positive, and the turning point will come with the new regulations in 2026. Sooner or later, he will solve his problems, said Briatore. He's a great driver, but today Formula 1 is complicated. There are 7 cars within 0.2. This year, only McLaren is really competitive. But next year, everything will change. You'll see, Hamilton will be back fighting for victories. And there is an interesting parallel that many have noticed. When Hamilton left McLaren for Mercedes in 2013, no one thought it was the right choice. For months he struggled to adapt, but then came 2014, the regulatory change. One of the most dominant cycles in the history of Formula 1 began. Today, history could repeat itself. Ferrari is not yet competitive. But if 2026 truly marks a technical revolution like in 2014, Hamilton could find himself in the right place at the right time again. And curiously, Briatore didn't always think this way. At the beginning of the year, he had admitted to not being convinced about Hamilton joining Ferrari. I respect the choice, but I don't understand why break up the Leclerc-Sainz duo. I wouldn't have done it. Yet, after seeing how Hamilton handled a very difficult year, his opinion changed. Now he calls him an extraordinary person and believes that 2026 will be the year of his rebirth. Obviously, the key will be the car. 2026 will bring a regulation that will reduce the differences between the teams. More efficiency, less downforce, and a completely new power unit. In short, a total reset. And those who have the ability to adapt like Hamilton could start winning again. In short, whoever understands the new rules first will dominate. Briatore knows this well. And if Ferrari finally manages to build a balanced and coherent car, Lewis could be back on top, just when everyone thought he was finished. Now, however, let's go back to talking about the present, specifically Mercedes' new front wing, because the FIA is somewhat skeptical about the flexing of this carbon part of the front wing, and it will likely be re-examined before the Austin Grand Prix, a topic we thought was closed returns, but as always in Formula 1, it is far from dead, namely the flexibility of the front wing. After the FIA directive from Barcelona, it seemed the case was closed, but now new details are emerging. And it all starts with a surprising weekend, the Mercedes victory in Singapore with George Russell. No one expected it. Mercedes arrived in Singapore cautiously without major updates, only with a small modified flap on the old front wing. Yet we saw a pole position and the victory, a result that made everyone in the paddock jump, especially because the temperatures and track characteristics was supposed to penalize the V16. That's where the suspicion started. How is it possible that without visible developments, Mercedes managed to transform like this? And the analysts' eyes immediately shifted to a specific part of the car, namely the front wing. The onboard images of Russell and Antonelli showed an unusual movement of the main profile, something that at first glance seemed like a controlled collapse of the flap. In short, a live wing that flexes just enough to generate more downforce in slow sections and less resistance on straight. The FIA has said nothing. There has been no official objection. But in such a close championship, even a few millimeters of flex can make the difference between a podium and 6th place. Note that Michael Schmid revealed that several teams have resumed suspicious work on front wings after the June directive. In particular, Mercedes has modified the wing design 4 times, Red Bull even 6, and these are small, almost invisible tweaks, but all aimed at improving the balance between slow curves and fast sections. Schmid explains that some modifications were circuit-related like Spa or Monza, but others, like those seen in Baku and Singapore, seem to aim for a structural advantage. And coincidentally, in recent months, Mercedes and Red Bull are the 2 teams that have found the best balance on track. The fact that the FIA has not objected does not mean the case is closed. On the contrary, when more teams start gaining advantages from a grey area of the regulation, a new directive is only a matter of time, and we might see a new technical directive right before the end of the championship. We'll see if any team will object to this new Mercedes front wing, because as of today, it is giving Bradley's team a tangible advantage. And considering that the battle for the Constructors' Championship for second place with Ferrari is not over, and there are millions of dollars involved, well, be careful, because some complaints will surely arrive. Enrico Cardile, former technical director of Ferrari, has spoken out about the future of Aston Martin. He said some strong words. In 2026, we will be competitive. I don't know if in the first, second, or seventh race, but we will be, because failure is not an option. After missing the 2022 regulations train, Aston Martin has learned a lesson. For the new regulatory cycle, Aston Martin has built a true technical dream team. Indeed, there will be Adrian Newey, the aerodynamic genius who has won everything with Red Bull, Andy Cowell, the man behind Mercedes World Champion engines, and Enrico Cardile, who brought his direct experience in car project management from Maranello. In addition, the team will have an exclusive partnership with Honda for the official power unit, a huge advantage in terms of integration and development, all in a new ultra-modern headquarters with wind tunnels, simulator, and state-of-the-art design tools. Cardile has stated it clearly. The goal is to optimize all the infrastructures for next year. We have everything we need to do an excellent job. However, be careful, he does not promise miracles. He is aware that it will take a few races to bring everyone together and to understand and develop the car in the right way. This leadership role of Cardile perfectly represents what is happening in the world of Formula 1, a brain drain from Maranello to those who truly believe in a long-term vision. And he said it himself. There is a cultural difference between Ferrari and Aston Martin. The goals are the same, everyone wants to win. But at Ferrari, the processes and tools have been consolidated for decades. Here we are still building everything from scratch. It's a different challenge. And he sent a message to his former colleagues in Maranello. It's okay to be inspired by others, but copying how others work is not the right way. You need to find your own vision and make it work. In short, for Lawrence Stroll, it's not so much a question of if Aston Martin will win, but when Aston Martin will win, because failure is not considered an option. Aston Martin wants to return to victory as soon as possible, whether it's the first or the 10th race of 2026. As Fernando Alonso himself also said, I will not retire until Aston Martin is competitive. Once Aston Martin reaches the top, I can leave and have an ambassador role within the team. We need to talk about one last fundamental topic for the future of Formula 1, namely the election of the new federation president. In fact, Mohammed Ben Sulayem is preparing to win the FIA elections for a second term, but this time there will be no real competition. Yes, you understood correctly. The federation president will be re-elected without rivals. Not because there were no interested candidates, indeed we talked about it, but because the FIA election system itself made it impossible to challenge him. In fact, according to a public inquiry, the mechanism that governs the candidacy for the presidency contains a huge flaw. In fact, to run for office, it is not enough to apply alone. Each candidate must propose a presidential list, i.e., a group of vice presidents representing all regions of the world. Middle East, North Africa, Africa, North America, South America, Asia Pacific, and 2 representatives from Europe. Only in this way can a candidacy be accepted. The problem? This time in South America, there was only one person eligible, Fabiana Ecclestone, and she chose to side with Ben Sulayem. The result is that all other candidates were automatically excluded, not because they didn't have support, but because the system blocked them from the start. Without a South American president on their list, their candidacies cannot be considered valid. It's a bureaucratic quirk that effectively guarantees Ben Sulayem's victory without even a vote. A spokesperson for the FIA responded to the accusations by explaining that all members had over 3 months to submit their candidacies to the World Motorsport Council from June 13th to September 19th. All information was available online, and the federation was available for clarification. But the problem is not the transparency of the process, it is the structure itself, and the regulation that requires each candidate to include regional representatives, even when there aren't enough. It's a system designed to ensure balance between the geographical areas of world motorsport, but in practice it has turned into a bureaucratic trap. With only one person eligible for South America, all other candidates are automatically out. And this despite there being at least 3 figures, Tim Mayer, Laura Villas, and Virgin Philippot, ready to run in the December elections. None of them, however, managed to complete the list. The result is that Ben Sulayem will have a second term without opposition, and therefore some are openly talking about democratic suppression. And it is not ruled out that there may also be a legal appeal to contest the legitimacy of the process. This situation highlights a huge weakness of the FIA system a regulation designed to ensure global representation, which ironically ended up blocking internal democracy. And there's another problem. To apply, each candidate must publicly declare the countries and federations that support them. This makes it difficult to gain support, because a losing candidate risks political or financial retaliation. In short, the FIA regulations, created to ensure balance and representation, have turned into a cage that now prevents anyone from challenging the current president. In fact, Ben Sulayem will be re-elected without even a vote. No one foresaw this rule. Not a coup, but a democratic short circuit. Let me know in the comments your opinion on all the topics we covered in the video. From the words of John Elkann and Benedetto Vigna, to the exclusion of some key engineers for Ferrari like Andrea Stella and Laurent Michier, Briator's words on Hamilton, and also the new Mercedes front, as well as the discussion on Aston Martin and the re-election of the federation's president, namely Ben Sulayem. I'm curious to read and respond to all your comments. As always, I remind you to leave a like, subscribe, and activate notifications so you don't miss any videos on the channel. That's all from Rastro. See you in the next video.